I am Jesse Cone. I'm representing Cone Farms and Somewhat Bioactive Forages. Actually, the president asked me this morning, how did I become the liaison between us and them? And basically, you got to have someone run point on things. If there's a group project and everyone's responsible, sometimes no one ends up being responsible. So I've been involved with running some of the numbers and the projections of how this will look when we get it up and running. So I kind of need my first slide to give you all the next details. But there we go. And do I click the arrows down here?
Yes, sir. Yes,
there we go.
Arrows.
All right. Thank you, sir. So this is the family. Cone Farms has been growing over the past few years in the best of ways. We've had 4 babies in the 2-year time frame. Over there on the far right is Daniel Blair. He's our full-time employee, and that's his full-time wife and our part-time employee on his arm there. And then moving left, that's my brother John holding his son Roger, his wife Kelly. Up on the tractor is Abigail. Down low in the black hat is my dad Richard and my mom Lindy. And that's me holding my youngest Naomi, and Charity up on the tractor, and my wife Juliet. And she's home cooking up another baby right now. So we got a 3rd one on the way sometime in November. Now, the plant plan. I'm going to go into some things we have to be thankful for as perennial peanut producers leading up to the details of what's going on with the plant. I just want to run over a few basic things. It's an 85,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility in Madison County. And those of y'all over in Jackson County might say, well, why is it Madison? There's a lot of perennial peanut over here as well. Well, if you look at the map of the growing area of where we think the bulk of the acreage is, Madison County is kind of the center of that universe. It might be kind of tilting further west, but most of the forage that is produced on a large scale in this part of the state flows through Madison County. So it's a good location to ship to. It's definitely a lot better than having to go all the way to Tampa or way down the East Coast. Now, 42,000 tons might be a hard number to wrap your head around. So I calculate everything in 50-pound square bales, because that's the bulk of what we do. 50-pound square bales converted to 42,000 tons would be 1.7 million square bales of perennial peanut annually. If you converted that to a 56-inch round roll, that would be right at 100,000 round rolls. And that's basically what they'll be using most of. But you can bring it in any form. They can bust it out and use it. But round rolls, large squares will be the main target for that. Now, back to the benefits of already growing perennial peanut. Those of us in this room that have been growing perennial peanut have a lot to be thankful for. If you haven't ever grown it, if you're considering it, crunch the numbers for yourself. This is my sister-in-law, Kelly, looked at the projections of what they thought at the beginning of the year, and a lot can change about this. There could be a drought, there could be a Hurricane Michael, or there could be 3 lesser hurricanes that throw these numbers all over the place. But this is our 30th year, our 30th anniversary growing perennial peanut. My dad planted our first 2 fields when I was 2.5 years old in 1995. And just looking over the history of the past 30 years, and the economic conditions, I don't think we would be on the farm today if we hadn't started growing perennial peanut when we did. We might have had something other to do, but if we had kept going down the road we were, we probably wouldn't still be in business. So this is just what you have to look at if you're growing cotton, peanuts, corn, and soybeans. Peanuts stand out right now, seed peanuts, as one of the most economically beneficial things to grow this year. But again, that can change. This is the perennial peanut numbers. We crunched them last year for a meeting we held, and this is based on a 330-acre Tito field on dry land in Madison County. It's got all soil types out there in that field, and this is it's now a 6-year average of yield on that field. So we're selling it for $13 per square bale right now. Our average yield on dry land is 141 bales to the acre. Gross return, variable cost per acre taken out, you're looking at about $1,240 profit. Now, on our farm, at our scale, we're going to get 1/3 of our hay wet every single year. All right, but that 1/3 isn't totally lost. It goes into baleage, and you get about half the money for baleage as we would on dry square bales. So taking away 1/6 of your profit, you're still running over $1,000 profit per acre per year, which is greater than double than seed peanuts. Now, again, others can do better than that. Others are going to do worse. That's just been a good average for us. So it's a good thing to consider. And again, it's a lot to be thankful for. Now, the next slide just goes to point out that there's challenges in whatever you're trying to grow. If you're getting into farming, you're going to spend a lot of money to get started with anything. If you're wanting to change the farming operation, you're going to spend a lot of money for that as well. There is no cheap equipment out there, but hay equipment is a lot easier to buy cheaply than other equipment. You can spend a lot of money on cutters, or you can spend, a few $1,000s on a 10-foot cutter bar. Like Mr. Conrad said, you don't have to condition it. A cutter bar works just fine. Same thing with hay rakes. You can spend a lot of money on very nice, gentle hay rakes, or you can go spend less than $10,000 on two, side delivery New Holland rakes, and they'll rake your hay just fine. So the startup costs are a lot easier to swallow than the alternative. Round balers, again, we're looking forward to using that more as the plant comes in, but we're not getting rid of our fleet of square balers because we have customers that we're going to try to take care of until they die or their horses die. So we're not shutting down that part of the operation. Now, if you want to row crop and keep up with the economic times, you're going to easily spend $1 million bill on a cotton picker. For that same $1 million bill, you might can get 2 brand new combines. That hurts. Again, you can buy used and you can buy parts, but as you've seen, the parts, the more equipment you have, the more complicated it is, the more expensive you're looking at. So back to the reasons for jumping into perennial peanut or just kicking that can down the road. We could talk all day about the good things, the good parts of perennial peanut, but there are some serious considerations for why people don't want to plant it or why they might not want to expand. And the first one is we've just never done that. Or maybe I did do a little bit of hay handling back when I was a young person and I didn't like it at all. So why would I want to do it now? Well, investigate the economics for yourself. And that's why we're excited about this plant coming along, because it makes the economics a lot sweeter. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but right now the demand for quality perennial peanut is high or higher than it's ever been. The plant will only increase that. We don't know exactly what we're going to face, but under current conditions, it's a very good opportunity to expand. So tradition keeps a lot of people out. If your farm's been around for multiple generations, if it hasn't adapted in every generation, then you're not profitable today. If you think back of how much farming has changed over the past 30 years, the past 60 years, we're truly having to adapt several times per generation. And we're doing that inside the perennial peanut world. Floor graze used to be all there was, and we were happy with that. But we're very thankful that some new things came along. Y'all remember life before Mazepik was released in 1996? Remember how much we bush hogged? That changed everything. Cadre coming along helped, just tremendously. And then the Tito and Peace varieties being released in 2010, that moved things up a notch. That's the level of change, the level of benefit we think we can see with the pelletizing plant coming along. The opportunity there is just something we haven't quite had before in the history of us growing it. So some other reasons people stay away and veer away from doing what we're currently doing now, and they don't want to handle small squares. Again, maybe they grew up before round baling was a thing, and they didn't like picking up 70, 80-pound squares by hand. Well, thankfully, we don't have to do that anymore. It's really nice knowing that once you have loaded that set on the trailer and you have put it in the barn, it's pretty much money in the bank. Don't want to be prideful or arrogant, because God could send a hurricane and wipe that barn out. But once you have baled it, you can sell it. We guarantee you can sell that bale of hay. And I had a fellow one time riding with me. It was about 10 o'clock at night. We had one of those rare nights where it's low humidity, the wind was blowing, and the hay could have sat out all night, but we had another day the next day. So it was 10 o'clock, and we were about 3,000 bales behind picking up. And he said, "When are you going to be done picking up?" And I said, "It's probably going to be around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning." And they said, "Don't you ever get tired of picking hay up all night or all afternoon?" And I said, "Well, you see that set sitting right there in the field? At that time, it was $10 per bale. That's a 10-bale set of hay." So I said, that's a $100 bill. I'm out here all night picking up $100 bills. I don't get really tired doing that. I know that we can sell this hay, and now it's a $130 bill. So even though inflation is eating up the profit, you understand it's still an exciting thing. The second thing that keeps people out of growing perennial peanut is customer service. They don't like dealing with the public, they think, or they've never dealt with the public, or they've had bad experiences with the public. We have had customers like that, and oftentimes we will pass them on to new producers, and so that they can enjoy them. But for the most part, we really like our customers. We like having a relationship with them. They're counting on us, we're counting on them, and we're not going to get rid of them. Our new acreage, we are dedicating to the plant so that when it gets up and running, we already have something ready to go to send there. So we're having to turn away customers every single week. There is a waiting list. Everybody wants to tell their friends about it, and we just tell them, don't do it, or else we're going to sell them your hay, and you won't have any hay. Now that's where we're at. If you put it up well, you're going to be able to sell it. Well, these two problems are directly eliminated once the plant gets operational. You don't have to handle the small square bales, and you don't have to deal with the customers if you don't want to. You have one buying point. You can take it there and get paid weekly, which helps with cash flow and stress perhaps. Another reason that deters people from getting started is the slow establishment. As we talked about some this morning, you're going to make nothing that first year at all. And in fact, you're going to be spending a considerable amount of money. But on Tito, typically the second year we recoup our planting and establishment costs and put a little bit of money in the bank. So by year 3, you're usually running full steam profitability. That field, by the way, on the left, back to the regimen for planting and storing carbohydrates up, we knew we were planting that 300 acres the next year, and we only had a nursery big enough to barely do that. So we wanted to give it every advantage we could. The year before, in 2017, we let that field grow all year long, didn't cut it at all until right before frost. We harvested a bunch of 30-inch stems and put them out to the cows, and they weren't very impressed with it. By the way, Tito will get rust on it if you let it grow all year long and don't cut it until November. So it was horrible hay, and we said, but that should help the sprigs. Sure enough, the next year, we've never seen a field fill in that quick. We thought, that's great. If we ever really want to give it an edge, we'll do that again. We did that this past fall, and we didn't cut something all year till frost, and we started digging those sprigs first for our earliest customers, and it made no difference at all. And we can't figure that out. We're going to do some more experimenting on that, but we basically didn't cut that hay 3 times for nothing, but based on the current data. So we're still working on that. But once you get it established, it is a very reliable, hard to kill, steady plant. The weather is also another issue. Hay harvesting, you're trying to do it 3 times a year with Tito. You have to cut it 3 times a year, or you're going to have low quality hay, one of those cuttings. But one thing we've learned in the past 2 years, we had 3 major hurricanes in 13 months. That knocked down a lot of corn. It messed up a lot of cotton. A lot of the peanuts that couldn't get in the field to dig them because they were too wet. We picked up a few hundred trees and a few 100,000 limbs and just went on back to cutting hay. You're spreading out your risk a lot more with a forage crop over a traditional row crop. So it's a quicker return on row crop, but once you've overcome that initial investment, it's a lot more steady with the perennial peanut. Okay, so back to the pelletizing. What are the basic benefits of turning our forage into pellet? Well, first of all, there is a large quality pellet demand. And we emphasize the word quality because I've said this before and we want to keep emphasizing it. You can't take low quality hay to the pellet mill and get a high quality pellet. They're going to be paying based on the quality of the bale, which means just like currently, you can't sell mold, you can't sell toxic weeds, you can't take those things and have it magically disappear. So we still have to put up a good forage, but there is a large demand for this to where it's a buying point that you can take it to in bulk. And also, so more on that in just a second, but another benefit of the pellet, it's more digestible. You can access the nutrients in it quicker. Decrease dust when handling feed. This is something we hear sometimes. Someone will say, well, your hay is dusty. And we say, well, hay is going to be dusty. And you get to choose which type of dust it's going to be. You can have hay dust from it being dry, which is what hay is supposed to be, or you can have mold dust from the hay being wet, and no one can feed that. And they'll say, well, I'll wet your hay down so that it's palatable. I don't know if they have like helicopter hovering, horse handlers or something now that's just, really worried about asthma in horses or something. But whatever the case, pellets are a little bit more appealing as far as consistency goes. Freight and storage savings. So pelletized forage is about 4.5 times more dense than square bale, than loose hay. So you can ship more. You can actually max your truck out. Uniform nutritional values labeled on the bag. Dr. Stewart might can elaborate on this a little more later, but they're going to assay all the hay that is brought in. They have to make sure it meets a certain nutritional level on the bag for all kinds of reasons. And so if you bring lower grade hay in there, they'll pay you the baseline price. If you bring higher grade, high protein hay in there, you'll get the premium because they don't have to worry about making it meet those standards on the bag. Okay, new way to sell. You don't have to make small square bales. Again, that would, if you were a new person getting started and the plant is up and running, you don't have to spend the money on small square balers, accumulators, grapples, tie grabbers, and the tight barns that we've had to build so far. So large round rolls, large square bales. They've got a tub grinder ordered that will handle the biggest bale you can make in the Western Hemisphere. So however you get it to them, they can grind it up. You can deliver directly to a buying point and get weight receipt and then get paid the next week. So cash flow in the summertime has been something of a consideration in the past because you usually sell more in the wintertime. This will be more imminent return on your expenses. And then located along I-10 for easy access. This is just west of the DOT scales. So if you're coming from this direction and your truck driver doesn't do things exactly like they're supposed to, they'll be getting off the exit before the DOT officer finds them. That's a really good location, we thought. We can just kind of, if we're making like 5x6 round rolls and we're hanging off everywhere, we can just kind of take the back roads and not even get on the interstate. Okay, more benefits to the producer. So it's a local buyer, which means no long distance shipping and marketing. It eliminates the necessity of on-farm storage. Mr. Conrad was pointing this out. It's not cheap to build barns. We've had to build 7 of them, and to hold all of our capacity. You can't just leave it sitting on trailers. You can't just put it under a pole barn for more than a week or two. You're going to start getting webworm and damage and loss. So we've had a lot of investment in completely enclosed, dry, dark storage. If you're a new grower and the plant is operational, they have the storage on site. So you would just need a place to run it under till the storm passes by, and then you don't have to put all that investment in that infrastructure. For example, if you were growing about 100 acres of Tito and you went to build a barn big enough to handle that capacity, you'd have to store about 2/3 of what you bale in a year, because in the 6 cutting months, you're not going to sell more than 1/3 of it on average. So you're going to have to build a barn that's going to run you about $100,000, unless you're very handy and you can do all the work yourself. $100,000 amortized out over the hay through the coming years. That first year, that's $7 per bale of the hay that you put up. If the barn lasts 10 years, that's only 70 cents. But that's not including the cost of insurance and rat poison and plastic and pallets and however it is you stack on them. So that's a pretty exciting thing, that you could expand your acreage without having to build the place to put it. We're really looking forward to that. So it eliminates the quadruple handling of the hay. With the pelleting plant, you load it directly on your trailer out of the field and can haul it straight there. We're having right now to load it onto our trailer, take it to the barn, unload it in the barn, store it for several months, load it again on a trailer, then take it to our customer, and then unload it at the customer, or provide a dry van for it to sit in until we swap vans with them. With the pelleting plant, you load it out of the field, take it at your convenience when their hours are open, and they unload it for you. So it's really just one handling for you instead of 4. That's a significant savings as well. And then a lower startup cost that we already mentioned, less equipment, less infrastructure. It eliminates that kind of brown comments. So we have some picky customers out there, and we love them to an extent. And then when it gets bad enough, we tell them, we're sorry, we're out of hay for you. And we might have hay, but not for them anymore. And we're to that point, we can do that if they break the rules 2 or 3 times. If you don't like dealing with those kind of people at all, they will take all your hay. If you like your customers, you can keep your customers. You're not signing an agreement that you have to sell all your hay to them, but they're happy to take it, and we'll be happy to supply it. Okay, let's see. Real quick, we're running out of time. The plant is designed with the latest, greatest equipment for handling the whole pelletizing process. It also is going to have significant storage. I did some quick numbers on this. Don't let me misquote them. So they have to have room to have a large hay supply on hand to run them through the winter months. So they have the storage capacity to hold processing what they're doing in the summer and then hold some into the wintertime. It would be the equivalent of about 100,000 square bales of what they can store on site, which would be about 6,700 56-inch rolls, which once it has gone through the pelleting process, you can take it 4.5 times that, they can store it on site. Some have asked, well, what are they going to do in the winter? Which is winter, the 6 months, we're not bringing any hay in there. Well, for those of us that already have barns built, we will be storing the lion's share of our production in those barns, and we will help supply it during the winter months. This is exciting, and I could spend 20 minutes talking about this, but just the cliff notes. What difference did the ability to dry grain make to corn and soybean growers? The flexibility that added for a row crop operation, we think can also realize itself for us. The pelleting house is planning to have a drying house that can handle about 83 tons per day, which doesn't sound like much, but that adds up really quickly to around 3,300 squares per day, or 208 56-inch rolls, or about 15,000 tons during the 6-month baling period. You wouldn't be drying hay after the baling period. So that can greatly increase the amount of hay we can bring them, because we would only have to dry it down for 2 days to get it down in the 20% moisture range, and they can dry it the rest of the way down from there. That might be just a localized phenomenon. If you live more than 2 hours away, it might not be very practical, but that will be an option once they get up and running. Okay, let's see. So partners, they're going to need partners, because to supply the plant just with perennial peanut, it's going to take an additional 5,000 acres of the Tito variety under average yield conditions, which is very manageable. It wouldn't take long to ramp it up to that far at all. And that's a lot more incentivized under these buying conditions than what we're currently under. But what I want you to understand is, even though the plant we were hoping was going to be here already, we were hoping it was going to be here last year, it's coming soon. You shouldn't wait for the plant to be here to go ahead and realize the opportunity that's all over the world. There is a huge demand for the perennial peanut right now. The plant is just a cherry on top. So don't shoot yourself in the foot and wait for something that's still to come. Okay, we've already talked about most of that. The Sericea lespedeza and sun hemp, can't go into that. If you have questions about that, we'll talk about it afterward. But it's not just perennial peanut, they're going to be pelletizing. So there's some other opportunities that some other people have asked about in the room. And we have a sun hemp seed provider here today, and he's an excellent source for that quality forage. Okay, this was the timeline I was talking about. Since the professor's here during questions, if we have time, I'll let him update you on the adjusted timeline. So very interesting things happen over the springtime, and I'll let him break that down for you. But we've reached the end of the rundown of basically what I wanted to go over. Are there any questions or comments on the current state of things concerning the pelletizing plant? Yes, ma'am. When they're done? Well, they're still going to be, they are focusing on these main forages. It's not that they won't find some flexibility somewhere, but they're not making plans. There's been a lot of strange questions about, will you pelletize my Bermuda grass? Will you pelletize my potato skins, stuff like this? That's going to be up to the management when it gets running, but it's designed and built to pelletize high quality forages. Perennial peanut, chief and foremost, and then Sericea lespedeza and sun hemp as supplementation. Right, so that's why I mentioned we can already store everything we bale in barns right now. So what we are storing will be supplying the plant in the wintertime. Not that we won't take some directly in the summer, but for the existing growers, it's not always convenient for us to haul a bunch of hay in June and July. So we can put it in the barn and feed out of that reservoir in the wintertime. So very good question. Anything else along those lines? All right, so that's the timeline thing. We'll get to that in just a second. Any other questions before we answer that one?
Natural gas available right there at that site for drying, or is it?
Are they running that out there, or?
There's a grant that's been applied for to bring it to us, and then in the short run, we're gonna run propane.
Right. Right. All right. And I know I ran close to lunchtime. All right, so on the timeline, back to this slide. This was the way it looked back in February. I was invited to do a talk out in Alabama, and this is the way things look. A lot of things have been happening in our government, and anybody who's tried to construct something lately, you know how there's a long waiting period on certain equipment. So, Dr. Stewart, can you give them a quick update on where we are with it actually breaking ground?
Yeah. I'll join you.
All right, this is Dr. Greg Stewart and Mr. Aaron Nowak. He's the Chief Financial Officer of the,
Sure.
yeah, number two man.
We're doing a lot of things. So like Jesse was saying, this was our original timeline. This is a complicated project, though. We're raising a lot of money coming from a lot of different sources, including government sources. And as Jesse alluded to, we've had a few changes in government recently, a lot of government spending cuts. And so as we were going through the process for both grants and for the loan, Doge came in at that moment and put everything on pause. So good to know, though, that we used all of our resources, including some people in the room here, to put pressure on the governmental organizations. And that has all been approved now as of about a month ago. So everything has been cleared, approved, and we're going really through the final closing process and should be breaking ground hopefully early Q3. So that puts us at about 37 weeks from Q3 now of 2025. So that's where we stand, but everything is fully funded and we're moving forward at this moment.
Any other questions along those lines? Yes, ma'am.
Guaranteed analysis product available, data that we can look at, so you talk about like the quality of this product. How would it compare to other prototypes, these products on the market?
Well, in the alfalfa business, most people bale the best and pelletize the rest. We're gonna flip that paradigm on its ear and try to produce the most premium product that we can.
So do you have a guaranteed analysis?
We will have one back. Yes, ma'am. And we will, the plant gives us the ability to make composite pellets that will guarantee a specific analysis. For example, the sun hemp, the leaves of the sun hemp are between 22 and 28%. So if you can imagine, if you're, we all know that we're a little bit lower on perennial peanut and protein area than we are on alfalfa, for example. But we anticipate bringing in 4 different legumes, 3 perennials and 1 annual. And we have the ability to blend those things and make warm season legume pellets and then have a guaranteed analysis on that. We'll have the superior product in the market. So it'll be better than anybody that's out there in terms of protein level and NDF, ADF, etc. We're trying to position, and the better people produce for us, the better compensation they're going to get. And in a former life, I was responsible for a contract, very, very large contract growing operation. Probably take the rest of my life to, get penance and forgiveness for doing what we did. But this to me is about producer returns and producing a quality product. But we don't have all the answers, but we approach it that way, and we're going to produce the best thing that we can. And my vision is for us to be able to produce animal feed without bringing in inputs from up north and whatever, and we can do that with this plant. And after 42 years of practicing veterinary medicine, I can tell you that most of the issues that we see in fermented animals, whether they're foregut or honeygut animals, start in the gastrointestinal tract. And if you ask me to produce a model where we go and study liver abscesses in cattle, for example, in the feed yard, the way we do that is by feeding a lot of readily fermentable sugars, feed a lot of cereal grains, and this is going to eliminate all of that issue. This is going to eliminate all the mycotoxin issues that are characteristic of cereal grains and seed grains, and we have so many advantages with what these products are going to do for us from the very beginning on the perennial side to the producer returns to the animal health to the phytonutrient density of the materials that the animals that are producing, and that translates into the One Health concept from soil all the way to human consumption. Any other questions?
We'll be around during lunch and afterward, so if you have any others, just let us know.